Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. So far, the market is not moving too much, but still, we should have a lot of big movement today. The S&P 500 is very flat, and a lot of other stocks have this same sort of setup. Some stocks are up a little bit in pre-market, some stocks are down a little bit, but Tom, I feel like there's not any major movers so far this morning, but you already beat me to it, and Tesla stock is falling just a little bit after their cyber rodeo.
Yeah, and I was hoping that event would actually go a little bit better, Mike. I know that Tesla's stock, I was hoping for it to get maybe a nice boost up today. Who knows, maybe the volume will come in here at market open, but I thought the event was pretty interesting. I didn't watch it live, but I went back and watched some of the past highlights with it. And, some of the biggest things I was seeing, Mike, was stuff where Elon Musk was talking about the new Optimus robot. That sounds pretty cool, actually. And, I don't know if anyone's seen the movie I, Robot, but it sounds very similar to the robots that were in that movie that, would do things humans just don't want to do, like cooking and cleaning or like, cleaning your house and different stuff like that.
Yeah, it is cool. I forgot the exact quote Elon said, but he was like, basically the robot will be able to do anything humans don't want to, so it's pretty cool. But
yeah, and it looks pretty sick. I mean, it's white with with a black shoulders / head, and it looks pretty, honestly, to me, Mike, kind of scary. I mean, but it looks cool at the same time. But could you imagine seeing all these stocking shelves in the stores and doing all the weird jobs that are considered just jobs where people could go be focusing on themselves? It's going to be very interesting, and honestly, I think it's going to be good for society overall that these robots are going to be doing some of those types of things that humans don't really want to. But yeah, I mean, he did mention a lot of stuff about this last night, Mike, and it seemed like this stole the headlines more than the cars did.
Yeah, George says creepy. Yeah. I definitely see both sides. Now, here's the thing, though. I know Musk kind of hinted towards the production of these robots maybe next year or something like that, but I don't see it, Tom. Elon is notorious for giving these early production estimates, and then normally the historically the vehicles don't even start being produced until years after. We can look at the Tesla Roadster or the Cybertruck or anything like that as an example, and there's a lot of other ones, but I'm sure we will see these produced. Just I don't think it's gonna be next year.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be next year, at least in a bigger sense. Who knows, they might finally get one of them completed or something like that, but yeah, I don't see it becoming big next year or anything like that. I don't see them actually selling any or producing anything in any type of mass numbers. But I mean, it does seem like something pretty interesting, though. And I will say, Mike, whenever I look at these robots, it's like he said, it's kind of creepy, it's scary. But at the same time, I think it's also good. It's just, if you've seen the movie I, Robot, Mike, you would know it's a pretty scary thing. At the end, all the robots started working together, and what happened in the movie is the main AI that was controlling the robots decided to try to take over civilization. And it's definitely an interesting movie, and for it coming out in 2008 or 2009, it was definitely ahead of its time there.
Yeah, cool stuff. All right, Tom, so looking at some other market news / market action, looks like we're definitely seeing more red than green today. I did see some news with CrowdStrike. I don't know if you saw that. They actually got an authorization type thing to protect some assets of the Department of Defense. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But that's the only other major news I saw.
You said that was with CrowdStrike, right?
Yeah, CrowdStrike, the authorization to protect critical U.S. Department of Defense assets.
Wow, that sounds pretty good, actually. I mean, I know CrowdStrike has been pretty big in cybersecurity and stuff like that, and I really hope this helps them. I mean, they've been on a nice uptrend over the past couple months. This week, they did dip down over the past few days, but they're coming back. So it definitely looks like an interesting chart, Mike. And I will say, like, CrowdStrike got rejected at like this resistance around 233 to 235 in a pretty major way. And I really hope to see him finally like go back up on maybe a second leg, because like we talked about, that uptrend over the past few weeks has been pretty good out of a few stocks. So I feel like that the uptrend is not totally done yet.
Yep. All right. And we also had J Deep mention oil popping, but it's kind of slowing down. Looking at oil, like it was popping, but it's coming back a little bit.
Yeah, the oil market itself, like crude oil, is actually up a little bit, but kind of like Mike said, it's just really slow today. I will say the oil stocks seem like they're doing a little bit better though. Like Oxy is actually ripping up in a pretty good way today. Looks like ExxonMobil is really breaking out above 85. So the oil stocks are moving well, Mike, but I will say oil itself isn't really doing too much.
Yeah, you're right. Because exactly what you said. Like crude oil, it's not really doing anything, but the oil stocks are what's moving. So yeah, good point there. George also mentioned Skynet. Let's see. I forgot their ticker. Skynet. Let's see. Trying to do a little search on Thinkorswim, but it's being difficult.
No, I think Skynet, Mike. I think Skynet is I think that's like the robots that controlled the Terminator in the movie.
Gosh, I was like, it kind of sounds like a cybersecurity company, but I've never heard of that stock, so I was confused.
Yeah, I think that is what it is. Hang on, let me search it up. Skynet Terminator. Let's see. Yeah, that is what it is.
Okay.
That's what it's from. And I remember this because, Mike, I think whenever I went to Disney World or Universal Studios or something, there was like a Terminator ride there, actually.
Oh, gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I've never seen this movie, but I'm looking at it right now. Let's see. Yeah, it's cool. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the company, they pretty much like a company came out and they made like, they tried to make like robots and AI, and then it like obviously went bad. So it was a funny situation there.
Gotcha. All right, Tom. Well, what are some of your favorite setups you're looking at to end the week? I know there's a lot of movement to the upside and the downside right now. What are you watching?
One of them that's been on my high ticker all week long is Halliburton, HAL. I guess I shouldn't say all week because it did have a few pullbacks here, but the past couple days it's been ripping back up. I guess it's going up with some of these oil plays today, but it's definitely starting to fly. It's up 3.25%. I'm really liking this. And Mike, I've been also eyeing up these defense plays. Like Lockheed Martin this week has been on fire. It's been kind of under the radar too, but Lockheed started off Monday, bounced off that 440 support, and we're sitting all the way up at 471 now. And if we look on the daily chart, Lockheed is approaching that all-time high around 480 once again. So we'll have to see how these defense plays do. I know Raytheon or RTX is also having a nice move up. Same thing with Northrop and GD. So we're seeing some nice moves out of the whole defense sector, Mike. And, I'm curious if maybe something's going to start happening with Russia again, because I know that like lately Russia's been kind of out of the headlines, but I did see yesterday that, they voted to take the UN or to take Russia out of the UN Human Rights Group or something like that. And, that's pretty telling. I know that they're starting to crack down on Russia even harder now.
Yeah, and I also saw an article on CNBC about how a rocket attack from Russia, obviously, on a Ukrainian train station killed more than 30 people and over 100 were injured. And I'm actually looking more into it right now. But yeah, I think there was a lot of civilians involved in that rocket attack. Yeah, thousands of civilians have been waiting at the train station. So yeah, I mean, I do feel like the media coverage on like the whole Russia/Ukraine situation has definitely dipped off significantly over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, it seems like it really has, like a lot of like we were hearing so many reports of like Russia assaulting different cities and stuff like that. And of course, we're still hearing some minuscule stuff now, like small rocket attacks and stuff like that. But other than that, we're not really seeing too much major stuff going on. And, like, even though like this is a pretty big headline, like obviously if that many civilians were injured and stuff, you would think it would be a little bit more important. But like if you go on CNBC, and you just go to the front page, you don't really see anything about it. You have to kind of scroll down to find the live news and then finally find it. You would think they would start pushing it a little bit more, but I don't know, Mike. Like, I'm curious if, obviously these guys, they really live on ratings, and I'm curious if like the Russia situation is just not as like important to investors right now. And I'm not saying it's not an important situation, it really is, but you know how these media companies just try to play whatever's drawing the most views.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm curious. It's interesting. But I was just looking through a couple different stocks right now. It looks like some of these China plays are starting to pop off. Alibaba had a decent reversal, and the candle looks decent, but it's kind of, I don't know, weird, you can say. Like, it's a giant green candle, but it's like kind of pulling back.
Yeah, it's huge. And yeah, you're right. It's coming right back down at market open now. And it's been so volatile today. Like, look at this on the 1 minute. BABA initially dipped off down to 103.65 and then flew all the way up to 105.50. And now it's coming right back to the downside. And, I know lately, Mike, I feel like at market open, we've been seeing a lot of stocks like just go crazy. Like they'll start to fly up and then reverse back down and stuff like that. And I don't know if there's like some increased volatility or something like that going on with all the Fed action, or with maybe all this Russia news, or I don't know. But I will say I feel like we've been seeing more volatility than usual over the past few weeks. And I know the SPY dipping usually brings in more volatility, so that might be what it is. But that's definitely some crazy price action there. I wonder how the others like Baidu and JD and others are holding up, and looks like they all have almost the same amount of movement here.
Yep. All right. And JD mentioned Kroger. Let's see. Like, some of these value plays.
They've been on fire.
Yeah, exactly. They've been on fire. And yeah, that one's booming. It's rising.
Yeah, this is huge, Mike. I mean, Kroger again, look at this daily chart. I mean, it is exploding. They had that last earnings report where they just seriously like rocketed all the way up to $62, almost $63 today. They just broke above that high. So it's nice to see him running like this, Mike. And it's not just Kroger, like you said, it's all these other value plays too. Like we have Walmart, we have Costco, stocks like that. They might not be green today, but over the past couple months, they've been explosive.
Yep. All right. And let's see. We have Eric saying, hey guys, can you check AMD? Not on my computer. Let's see. AMD. It's down like 2% today. Tom, we are getting very close to that $100 support.
Yeah, that's going to be huge, Mike. That $100 it's been huge for AMD for the past like 6 months almost. Let's check it out on that 180-day, 4-hour chart. You can go all the way back to the end of January where we started bouncing off of 100, and we've hit it like 2 or 3 other times and went right back to the upside. So now that we're finally testing this again, Mike, I'm really a little bit worried about AMD here, because in my opinion, I just don't like the setup too much. And if we do fall below 100, I will start to get worried. Now, keep in mind, you have to give or take maybe like 50 cents or so. We did fall below 100 slightly at the end of January and came right back up. So you do have to look at $100 a little bit objectively. Like I said, maybe give or take $1. You could almost look at $99 if you wanted to. But to be honest, like Mike, it's pretty worrisome because we're seeing a lot of big tech stocks pull back as the Fed started to announce the tightening. And, I know that as the Fed starts raising rates and stuff, it's set to make some of these tech stocks go down. And, if AMD starts breaking this support as the Fed's raising rates, I mean, who knows? We might start to see a pretty good sell-off.
Yeah, true that. AMD is it's very volatile, and I know we have both been a little bit bearish on it for what, Tom? At least the past couple weeks, but I know that we were talking about it for at least a couple months. But $100 will be huge, and they're in a great industry. They're a growing company, but their valuation was a little bit too high. It has been a little bit too high, and it's slowly coming back to reality. But $100 is a huge level. Keep an eye on that. It's a big like support level, but it's also like a big psychological level, Yeah,
exactly. Like I feel like just a lot of investors try to buy into companies, like especially like big ones like AMD, whenever they dip down. And then whenever you dip down and you're also at a big size psychological level like $100, that just makes it even better. So I don't know. I feel like maybe some volume can come in and help push AMD up, Mike, but it's going to be a tough one, with the Feds tightening their policy and everything. I feel like that AMD might finally fall off through that support. But honestly, Mike, I hope the support holds up. I just don't think it will. But, I'm just trying to be objective. Like I said, I hope it holds up, but it's so tough right now with the Fed tightening and everything. And, it's not just AMD that we've been seeing go down. Even stocks like Apple and Microsoft are starting to consolidate a ton. And like, look at Microsoft here on the daily chart, Mike. Like, they're starting to pull back in a pretty major way, actually.
Yep, true that. All right, and then we have Mike saying, so disappointed in DraftKings. Hope this turns around soon. Yeah, it's been very frustrating with good old DraftKings. It was looking great a couple weeks ago, but it's definitely selling off in a frustrating way, as we can just see on the chart. Over the past week, it's been like especially red, you can say. Honestly, there really hasn't been any major news come out specific towards DraftKings, but as we look at other growth stocks over the past week, a lot of them did have similar movement. As Tom said, we have some big events with the MLB and, just golf with the Masters, and you would think that'd be good. It's not as big as like the NFL is, or like college football is for sports betting, but still major sports events are definitely a good thing for this company. But yeah, Tom, from what I saw, it just looks to be, just the movement out of the growth sector over the past week.
Yeah, I would say that as well. It's not really necessarily DraftKings' fault. Like he said, we've been seeing a lot of other stocks going down also. Like, we can even go look at big stocks like AMC, Mike. Like, some stocks like AMC, they've been really tanking off the past week or so. And, it's not just them. Like, Robinhood is starting to come back. Like, look at Robinhood. It's just been straight down all week long. Even some of these other stocks that deal with sports betting, Mike, like, well, maybe not necessarily sports betting, but casinos in general and stuff like that, like Penn Gaming has been getting crushed this week. And then even stocks like ChargePoint, Blink, Plug Power, stocks like that have been pulling back in such a drastic way that I'm just sitting here like, man, are we going to ever go back on the uptrend? It finally seemed like these growth plays were going to start popping back up. And, in some cases they did, but this week's been brutal. Like, look at Plug Power here, 4 huge red days in a row. And this is a pretty decent chart. Like, if we go look, like we were talking about DraftKings, man, it just looks so terrible. Like, they're approaching that all-time low again. And, it's not just them. Like we said, though, Zoom is doing this too. Palantir is setting up in a weird way. So it just, it sucks to see these growth plays continue to fall. But Mike, I feel like though, like, we're not going to go back up right away. And I think this is starting to maybe show investors that I feel like this is going to be more of a longer term play than just like a short term swing back to the upside. Like, keep in mind that we're not in the easy policy we were during COVID. So I don't think we're going to see that explosive recovery that people are looking for based off of COVID, because, I know everyone saw that recovery there and then they're like, well, hey, that's going to happen again. But we have to keep in mind the Fed is changing their policy in a major way.
Yeah, that is true. It's definitely going to be a wild ride back up with DraftKings and all of these other growth stocks. So, whether you're trading DraftKings, Palantir, Unity, Facebook, well, I guess you can, let's say we skip Facebook. Because it's not really a growth stock, it's more established. But let's say you said Square, stocks like that. It's going to take time for the companies to come back up. Tom kind of said it perfectly, like, the recovery that we are set for right now will be much different than we had in 2020 because of just the completely different Fed policy, So that's important. Let's see. I'm just like looking at the stream, Tom. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it did cut out actually for like half a second.
Okay, because I was talking and then like I'm like looking at the YouTube and it's just like stream disconnected. I'm like, oh no, not again. So I just wanted to make sure we're still good. But anyway, so we're the recovery that we will see with the growth industry will be much different than what we saw in 2020, just because the policy is different and it's just the world's different right now.
Yeah, it really is, and a lot of those growth plays were benefiting, like in Zoom's case, they were benefiting off COVID at the time. And, I know like DraftKings was also kind of benefiting because, those online, more people were online at the time. And, that always helps anything that has to do with being online. Like whenever you're stuck inside and stuff like that, it definitely helped some of these companies. But yeah, I mean, now they're starting to come back to reality. And like we've been talking about the past few months, Mike, I think some of these fundamentals are going to be really important to look at. Like, like as we start to look like at DraftKings and Zoom and stocks like that, it's going to be important to see how these companies do with their cash flows, with their revenue, how much debt they have, because it's going to be important because I think that's going to also dictate like how much some of these recover. Like we've been talking about, Mike, not all of these growth plays are going to come back. Like some of these stocks will probably get stuck down here at the lows and probably even end up, going out of business eventually. So hopefully, some of the bigger ones do end up coming back, but we do have to keep in mind that not everything's gonna be be sunshine and rainbows here.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's definitely reality. So good stuff there, but specifically looking at DraftKings, it's a company I love. I believe DraftKings will do very, very well in the future. It's at a great level, and as long as you're willing to hold it, and as long as you have shares or at least options that have a high probability of being in the money by expiration, you should be good. That's just my opinion, but when you look at when you look at the numbers and their growth rates and their current valuation, I believe it's at a great level, and I think it'll do very well over the long term.
Yeah, and there's that not even all the states are legalized yet. Like they're only able to go into what, like 18 states right now or something like that, and they're going to be eventually getting into Texas, Florida, California, even my state, Mike, Missouri has a bill going through right now called Show Me Sports Betting, where it's like they're trying to get it legalized here. So it's very interesting. And I think honestly it'll help bring some money into some of these states. Like they'll maybe implement like a small tax or something like that. And I'm sure that like other states that already have it legalized, like Illinois, have been making some good money on it. So we'll have to see how it ends up going. But I also feel like the DraftKings will do very, very well. I'm a little bit biased because I love sports, but either way, the sports industry is huge. Like look at how much money the NFL brings in, the MLB, and different industries like that. They bring in so much. And like I know a lot of people like to discount the baseball games, Mike, but keep in mind, like they play 162 games a year, so it's a lot different than only playing like 14 games.
Yep, true that, true that. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I am just moving some things around. All right. Let's see. Doing a quick scan. Tom, it looks like the VIX is rising a little bit, as you can expect with this small sell-off. What are you thinking about the market today and just maybe the VIX for like a potential hedge?
Yeah, I think that might be a pretty good play, especially heading into next week. I think it would be better to maybe enter it on Monday if you were going to enter. I will say the SPY's falling down right now, but we're going to be falling down into some pretty major levels. Like we're approaching this 446 support, which it looks like the SPY could break. There's a lot of downwards momentum here, but then we have to worry about that low of yesterday around 444. And, I could see maybe the SPY going to 444 or maybe lower, but I mean, that would be a pretty big move out of the SPY, Mike. I mean, I know yesterday it moved that much at the end of the day, so it's definitely possible, but I don't know. I don't see a huge sell-off coming in today or anything like that, at least below the low of yesterday. But although I think it might be able to happen with the way the Feds have been tightening their policy and with everything we're seeing out of like Russia and stuff like that, we've been seeing some increased headlines. So I feel like the S&P 500 could end up falling off a little bit more. Like I said, though, there's some pretty big levels. Like I think 446 might pose as a pretty good intraday support. I know 444 has been a support for like the past few months, so that's a huge level down there. But I even think 446 might hold up in the short term.
There we go. And then while you're giving levels, can you check out the next support for QQQ? I ran close wondering.
Yeah, definitely. QQQ. They also had a nice support at the low of yesterday, but let me go back out in like a little bit of a longer term chart. just to get a better sense of everything here. But yeah, it looks like the QQQ, the main support I'm gonna see, Mike, is like right around that low of yesterday, right around, you could say, like 349 to 348. There's definitely been some bounces there, especially like back on like at the beginning of March. That's where I'm seeing the main movement around 348 to 349. But I will say, if we break below that, I could see QQQ coming down to 345. I think 345 will be the bigger level here, but keep in mind that low of yesterday might end up holding up kind of like the SPY.
There we go. All right. We have Mink saying good morning. Love you guys. Thanks for all you do. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for joining. And if you're new here, feel free to demolish that like button. Even if you've been with us for a while, hitting that like button really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And a lot of you guys already know the drill, but let us know what stocks you're watching, and we can definitely take a look at them. Tom, I just have a couple of my screeners pulled up, and basically it's just showing like Apple, AMD, and Intel, kind of just like moving pretty strong at that low of day.
Man, they are. Look at Apple here. It's actually breaking below the 170 support. This might actually be a pretty good play to the downside, Mike. Like, Apple been consolidating for a couple of days, and I know in yesterday's stream and in yesterday's YouTube video, we were talking a lot about some of these bigger tech stocks falling off, and it looks like Apple's breaking that big support there. So who knows? We might see some increased selling pressure. That's a really good thing to point out. You also said one of my holdings, Intel, is down, Mike. No, that's never good. They're down 1.3%. Yeah, it looks like Intel's like slowly approaching some of these more major support levels again. Hopefully they get some nice bounces there. But poor AMD, Mike, almost down to $100. So we'll have to see what ends up happening, because like I said earlier in the stream, I wouldn't be surprised if AMD fell below 100. And I'm someone who loves these chip plays. I love tech stocks, and I'd love to grab AMD for the longer term under 100. So even if it does fall under it, Mike, I'm not even going to be too sad, because like, let's say AMD falls down to like $80 or something. I mean, I'll be jumping up and down for joy with some cash secured puts down there.
Haha, true. There we go. Tom, can you pull up HPQ really quickly? I just want to see how it's doing, especially after that Buffett announcement.
Oh gosh, this thing was on fire yesterday.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so it's just pulling back a little bit today. They actually are, they're not at a bad level, Tom. Like, I don't know if you watched the video from yesterday, but HPQ is not at a bad level.
Yeah, I know it's not at a terrible level, and it's just now starting to break out. And, like, whenever a lot of these stocks break out, they start to run up in some pretty big ways. And one thing that I really like, Mike, is we can see that $35 has been a huge support on HPQ, right? Like, it's been bouncing there ever since April of last year. Now it's bouncing there again. And if we go to like a max weekly chart of HPQ and we go back to the early 2000s, $35 was actually the high at the dot-com bubble. So now that we're holding that and we're starting to break out, Mike, I feel like you're right. HPQ is at a decent level, and it's been consolidating, I mean, for like 22 years. So it's really cool to see it finally breaking out. It's having some nice movement, and that news with Warren Buffett's big. And as we know, Warren Buffett likes to get in for the longer term. So you would think that this stock would have some more upside potential. And with the way it's breaking out, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it kept running.
Yeah. And it also pays a decent dividend, and they repurchase a lot of their shares too. So that's good. Like I made the video yesterday, their revenue has been growing for the most part. They are pretty profitable too. They have a lot of free cash flow. My concern, Tom, is like, I feel like this company they're not like that innovative in my opinion. But then again, it's like they are like just kind of like a value stock type play anyways, and they're not, that's not really what they focus on, you know what I mean? Do you have any opinions on just HP as a company, not their stock, not their fundamentals, but like their actual like products?
Yeah, I will say I'm kind of with you. HP is they're not too innovative. They pretty much, what I believe their main business is just like their computers, their laptops, and different stuff like that. of course, I'm sure they're like outsourcing a lot of chips and stuff from other companies like Intel and AMD and Nvidia to like run some of these laptops. But I know that they've been pretty big in the computer space for a long time, and they're probably not going to go away anytime soon. Like you said, I would think it's more of like a safer like value type of play. As far as like their company, I think you're right. They're not really huge innovators, but at the same time, they do still make a decent product, and people aren't just going to quit buying like HP laptops out of nowhere. So I feel like that they'll do decent. My main concern, kind of like what you have, is just that innovation. Like lately over the past few years, I feel like more people have been getting into like the computer industry and stuff like that. Like people love to go on like Newegg, for example. They even have a stock, NEGG. You can go on Newegg and just build your own computers now. And then there's even more computer companies coming onto the market. So, like you have to worry about like HP, for example, has to worry about obviously like Dell's computers, Apple's computers. And then there's even more like, there's always new companies coming out building these things because, it's not too hard in reality, Mike. You just get a little shell of like a computer and then you can just start building them out. And especially as far as like powerful computers go, there's so many crazy companies now like Origin PC and Zydax and companies like that. So I don't know. I'm with you. Like I feel like that they'll be solid for the long term, but it does worry me with that innovation because I feel like that like obviously during like the dot-com bubble of like the early 2000s, I feel like HP was a little bit more relevant than they are now. But at the same time, like you said, like their revenue and stuff is good. So that's why I think they'll end up holding up is just their numbers. But I will say that the company themselves, Mike, like you're right. It's not the most innovative thing. And I'm not sure, like, I think for the long term, it will hold up. It's just, obviously it's not my favorite situation to be in.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, I guess we'll see with them. Either way, like their revenue has been growing. They are a profitable company. They pay a good dividend. They buy back a lot of shares. It's like it's hard to bet against a company like that. So we'll see what happens. But good stuff there. What else was I gonna do? Oops, I'm loading up back to the YouTube. So yeah, I'm just going to do another quick scan. It looks like Oxy and ExxonMobil are also continuing to break out. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, Oxy kept going here. Let's see. It's up 3.6%, really starting to move up. And yeah, I mean, we're actually approaching that $60 resistance, which was a pretty big level earlier in the week. Like we got to 59.81, touched it, and then rocketed right back to the downside. It does look like today, Mike, like there's definitely some renewed momentum here. I hope it continues up. I would hate to see I would hate for Oxy to maybe run up to like $60.20 or something and then come flying right back down. That'll probably be what happens, to be honest, Mike. It seems like that's been happening more times than not lately, but I hope they finally break above 60 in a major way. Same thing with Exxon and Chevron. Like we can see Exxon here, Mike, is finally breaking out this week. Like I know $85 was a pretty big resistance for them, and that break this morning was explosive. So, if anyone caught any of these moves, definitely let us know because some of these moves were insane, especially like in Exxon's case. Like it really broke above that upper resistance. And what I really like, Mike, is it was such a clean break. Like it kind of confirmed off it right at market open and just started ripping.
There we go. Let's see. It looks like Walmart's still going, Tom. Did you see this?
No, I didn't, but it's still up. It's 0.6%, almost up to 157.82 today. I wonder how high Walmart's going to go. I mean, I know this one just keeps running, and it's breaking out on the daily chart in a pretty big way. Like I said, I don't know where it's going to get to, maybe like 160 or something like that. That would definitely make for some nice movement, but it's insane to see them up so much. And same thing with Target, Mike. Like Target yesterday was up like 5%. It was like blowing my mind.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and we have Mike saying thoughts on Matterport, so MTTR. Let's take a look. Let me just pull it up really quickly.
Oh, no.
Let's see. Matterport, down 6%, Tom. Do we have any major news with this one lately?
I haven't seen anything big with Matterport specifically. It looks like, though, this morning, looks like Berenberg Bank, looks like something from Germany, Berenberg Bank adjusts Matterport's price target to $12 from $25 and then maintains a buy rating. So looks like they cut that price target in half. I haven't seen too much news over the past few weeks with them, but I will say, to me, they've just been going down with all the other growth plays. They kind of remind me of like a DraftKings today or like a Zoom. They are turning over and it's not good. They're going to be approaching that all-time low here, or not, maybe not the all-time low, but the low of the past couple of years pretty soon there, like right around 5.71 or $6. We're only like 98 cents away from that actually. So it's tough with Matterport, Mike. And like I said, though, I don't think it's necessarily their issue. That price target adjustment definitely sucks, but keep in mind that a lot of companies have had their price targets adjusted lately. Like even DraftKings has had some bad target adjustments. So I'm not going to take that too seriously. But whenever I look at other metaverse plays like Unity, I mean, they're also down.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm looking at some of the fundamentals on Matterport right now. They're not the best, but then again, it's a growth company. It's like it's hard to compare like a company that's in the very early stages against a company who has been like operating at like a very high standard for the past 20 years. Like, you know what I mean? But looking at Matterport, some of the main fundamental points that I'm seeing is they have a very high price to sales ratio, which is like 17.4. That is pretty high. A lot of times, yeah, like that is pretty high. To put that into perspective, like if we go to their yearly revenue, in 2021, they had an annual revenue of 117 million, and right now their market cap is around 2 billion. So like if you went to like, let's say Apple, for example, they only have a price to sales ratio of 7.4, which is even a little bit high for Apple. Like even if we went to like something that's, initially I wanted to go to like a company like Ford, but comparing like a price to sales ratio on a company like Ford to Matterport is just, it's not apples to apples, so I'm not going to do that. But just the main thing to take away is that they do have a pretty high price to sales ratio. In order for that to normalize, they either need to bring in more revenue or they have to have a lower valuation, which means their stock price goes lower. Kind of like what Tom said, they have some metaverse potential. Their revenue has been growing over the past couple of years. Their 2020 annual revenue was around 86 million. Like I said, 2021 annual revenue around 111 million. Looking at some of the other things here too. I mean, they have potential. They're not trading at like a cheap valuation, but they definitely have potential, and it's fine to trade at a high valuation as long as there's a very high degree of certainty that their revenue will grow in the future. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with trading at a price to sales ratio of 17.4 if a lot of revenue growth is expected over the coming years.
Yeah, and who knows? Like look at how Tesla was moving, Mike. Like I know Tesla took a long time to reach profitability, and the reason why Tesla was doing so well during those times of uncertainty, you could say, was just straight up because of cash from investors. They had so many people buying their stock and stuff like that it was helping them hold up as a company, and they were getting kickbacks from the government for being in the EV sector and everything like that as well. And you can see how bad Tesla was moving. I mean, like look at this case, and like in 2018, Mike, like Tesla fell from $75 a share on a split adjusted basis all the way down to like $35. That's over a 50% slash on Tesla in just like 2 months. Like, and we have to keep in mind a lot of growth stocks are having this type of movement, like right now. And sometimes, in some cases it's worse movement than Tesla's. In some cases it's better. But, that just goes to show you that as long as the company's innovative and as long as they, do end up bringing in that cash flow, it can still end up going well. It's just in the short term, I feel like, a lot of big investors are looking at, Mike, I feel like all these growth companies, because, Tesla was a pretty big outlier. They're looking at all these stocks like Matterport, Unity, Plug Power, Blink, like you name it. And they're probably sitting there thinking to themselves, like, wow, like not all these companies are going to be the next Tesla. And, they're probably picking and choosing here. And like, if I'm going to be honest, Mike, like Matterport, like I love it. I think it's a pretty cool company, but it's not innovative enough to me to like justify like being at like $37 or something like that again. So it's a tough one, and that's, I know that's just my opinion, but obviously everyone's entitled to theirs. But I do feel like though that like for the long term, Matterport will do well with the metaverse coming up. But I just feel like kind of like what we said with HPQ, like I just feel like they're just not in like a super innovative sector, although I feel like they have potential.
Yeah, I do think what Matterport does is pretty unique, and I personally feel that they are pretty innovative. Now, where I will agree with you is like I don't think they should have been trading at $37.60 back in November and December. And I'll also say the same thing about Zoom. Like I love Zoom as a company. I think that their stock will do very well over the long term. But should they have been trading at $588 back in 2020? Absolutely not. Like that was just, it was so overvalued, and you can say the same thing about Matterport when it was at 37.60. At its current valuation, it's a lot better than what it was at 37.60. Obviously, they are still trading at a high price of sales, but like I said, like as long as Matterport and the market is expecting that revenue growth, then it's okay to trade at this valuation. But I also agree with you in the sense that not every company is going to make it, like I forgot who said it, but like can we go to a chart of Amazon in like 2000 to like 2001, something like that. So once that loads up, we'll be able to see that Amazon lost, I think it was like 95% of its value over the span of 2 years. It went from $113 down to $6. Amazon, the multi-trillion-dollar company today, went from 113 down to 6 from 1999 to like 2001. All right. Since then, it went from 6 to over 3,000. Right. Amazon is a company who not only survived the dot-com crash, but it obviously flourished afterwards. And now, Tom, I want to look at a different example. Let's check out Cisco. And let's go back to like 2000s, somewhere like that. Cisco, I believe, let's see, it's loading up. Tom, okay, perfect. So like, it looks like Cisco had a high of like $82 back in like 1999 and 2000. Cisco has not recovered to that high ever since that dot-com bubble crash, right? It's going to be a situation similar to this with a lot of the growth companies out there. Some of them will flourish and will explode past their previous highs, where some of them will never reach back to their crazy valuations that they had in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. That's really telling to go back and look at some of these examples. And I know we've been doing this over the past few weeks sometimes, and I hope everyone likes these types of examples, because the dot-com bubble was pretty telling, and this is a really good example, Mike. $82 down to like 10, and it never recovered back to 82. That's pretty insane. And like you would think Cisco would have been a pretty innovative company. Like honestly, like I bet a lot of investors are probably pretty surprised by this chart. I know I personally am, and it's pretty crazy to see how some of these companies move like this. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's definitely pretty important, because not every company is going to just, do what Amazon did and recover back. And, I do feel like that, like a lot of these growth plays are pretty innovative, and they're good for the future. It's just, it's so tough, because like not all of them are going to come back. And honestly, Mike, like I like a lot of them, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's so many of them at great levels right now that it's just, it makes it really tough to choose. And I think, honestly, maybe just looking at some of those fundamentals will be very crucial in helping that. But overall, I mean, it's going to be tough, because, you're going to have to try to pick and choose some of these to get for the longer term. And, like personally, like I've been getting into like DraftKings, Corsair, AI, like stocks like that. Obviously there's a few more sprinkled in there, but those are some of the main ones. And like, I know like DraftKings, like obviously they have a lot of room to go back up. And, like let's be honest, like a lot of these sectors just they have so much potential for the future. Like Matterport, if the metaverse does start exploding, I mean that could be huge for them. I know like the way Matterport like scans rooms and puts them into like 3D drawings and 3D like spaces is really cool to see. And I hope that it ends up flourishing, but it's just one of those situations where like there's so many growth stocks low right now. Like if I'm picking and choosing, I'd probably just pick something else.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it's definitely not bad, Mike. Matterport, it definitely has a lot of potential. So we'll see what happens with it. Let's see what else we have moving, Tom. Looks like DCM said GLD on a rocket ship. How's it doing?
Doing very well, actually. I will say it held up again today at 180 in a big way, and we continued to fly back to the upside off of that support. So that's looking pretty good today, actually, Mike. And if we look at GLD on the daily, it's starting to point back up. And, if GLD starts running back up towards like 185 and then maybe 190, I'd be ecstatic. And I think it might start to happen soon because, like sometimes, like obviously commodities, they've been on fire lately and they can't just go straight up forever. So of course we had to see some consolidation come in, but I feel like we might start to see a second leg up. And especially, Mike, if we start to see some more news come out of Russia, then I think gold will go even crazier because it seemed like whenever we were at the peak of the Russia news, that's whenever gold was really flying up. And now that Russia started to, maybe like leave the headlines a little bit, it started to tumble back off. So I feel like now we might see some more increased volatility, hopefully.
There we go. And then we have Keisha saying Target is still moving also. Tom, these like retailers, I guess, what would you call these stocks? Like Target, Walmart, and Kroger?
I think I would count them as a retailer. They sell everything from food to clothes to batteries. Maybe you could call it like a large like outlet store or something like that. But I would almost live with a retailer there.
All right, so we'll call them retailers. So they've been booming lately, like especially Target, Walmart, and even Costco too. Like it's been insane, and they're definitely moving up in a very good way.
Yeah. I looked up the official sector Walmart's in, and so you could call them a retailer or a wholesaler. So
okay.
I guess that would be another way to say it is wholesaler. But you're right, they've been flying. I mean, it's crazy to see them up this much, and especially like on the daily chart. Like it's just they're getting so explosive at this point, Mike. Like personally, I'm waiting for a pullback now. But I mean, like look at this with Walmart. It's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is going to be the 10th green day in a row if it holds up, and it could almost be 11 if you count this doji down here as being green, but it's white because there was technically no movement. But that's it's pretty telling when you have 10 green days in a row, Mike, and it's not just Walmart, it's the whole sector. Like Costco's the one that really blew my mind with the way they're moving, and I know someone brought up Kroger earlier this morning. They just broke to a new high too.
Yeah, so I'm looking at their industries on FinViz. FinViz classifies their industry as a discount store for Walmart, Costco, Target, and they also have like Dollar General and Dollar Tree in there, obviously. How are like DG and DLTR doing?
Yeah, DG, let's see. I know DG was doing pretty good. Wow, yeah, it's doing great actually on the daily. It broke above the 240 resistance, which it got rejected at a few times, and it's starting to run up. DLTR has been on a major uptrend over the past like 6 months to a year. I will say, like, even the max daily on Dollar Tree doesn't look too bad. So these stocks have really been booming, Mike, and honestly, ever since COVID, they've been doing well.
Awesome. And then Keisha said, what are your thoughts on WBA, Walgreens? Let's see, WBA. Let's see, give me 1 second to load it up. My Thinkorswim has been loading very slowly, Tom. I don't know. But
yeah, that's crazy, Mike. You're gonna have to we'll have to like call up Thinkorswim live on here one day and talk with them.
Gosh. But WBA, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with them. They're kind of just like a value stock. I've also looked at CVS too. I mean, I'm not seeing anything like out of the ordinary with Walgreens right now. It just, I don't know, Tom. It just looks like pretty like normal movement to me.
Yeah, like CVS has been exploding. Like it seems like Walgreens is kind of lagging behind here. at least behind CVS. But I will say, like, I feel like for the long term, Walgreens will do pretty well, Mike. I'll have to look more into some of their fundamentals, I think, and I think their fundamentals will be decent, especially after COVID. Like, you would think that they would maybe have some increased revenue or something like that the past couple years. I could be wrong, but I would think they'd be doing a little bit better. But man, it's crazy to see CVS doing so well. Like, really, like, CVS is running up with some explosive movement here, and poor Walgreens is just kind of like staying under $55. So I don't know what to think of this one, Mike, but I will say, like, if you like Walgreens for the long term, it's at a decent level right now. I'm not sure it's the stock to own for the next 5 or 10 years.
Yep. All right, and then we have neighbors saying, good morning, guys. Keep up the great work. Sorry I haven't been here every day. This dumb 9-to-5 job keeps getting in the way. LOL. You guys are awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining when you can, neighbor. Tom and I really appreciate all of your comments, especially on the main channel. You're super consistent, and it really does mean a lot. So thanks so much for joining. Thanks for joining. We have Iranical saying, I think AMD is going to break 100. I think it will too, not necessarily today, but I can see it over the next couple weeks and the next couple months. But we're getting really close today.
Yeah, we got really close. $100.42. Like, I hope by the end of the day we're below it, but who knows? We'll have to see what ends up happening. But man, it seems like AMD's been going straight down like all morning. Like, it had maybe a few minutes of trying to move back up, but other than that, it's just had some explosive moves down. It's a tough one today, Mike. Like, a lot of these stocks are falling off in some major ways. Poor Tesla here. Like, their Cyber Rodeo event, I guess they didn't catch any cows or something. I mean, they're falling back off to the downside. I guess I'm not saying the event went bad, but it definitely didn't bring the hype into Tesla stock that I think some investors were hoping for. And Mike, we talked about this a lot in last night's video because just like we saw with Battery Day. Elon came out, he spoke, and while it was a really good event, Battery Day was, it still ended up making the stock fall down for a few days. And I feel like that this might happen with this event. And keep in mind that this event just wasn't anything crazy. They were just opening up the factory. While Elon did make some announcements about that Tesla bot, just keep in mind though that announcement isn't necessarily like the biggest thing. We already did hear about that bot in the past, but it is cool to see that it, to see pictures of it and to hear him talk about it. But obviously, it's not bringing in any momentum into the stock, which is a little bit unfortunate. And Mike, I'm curious because like that robot seems like a pretty big deal. I thought maybe it would, make the stock pop up a little bit more, but it seems like it isn't. I wonder if something like will come out in the future regarding that robot, and maybe we'll hear about like an advancement in AI or something like that, and then finally it'll make Tesla move up.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the event. I thought it was pretty awesome, but it just doesn't equal like a rising stock price. Like, just like what we talked about in yesterday's video, like the Battery Day event. It was good. It wasn't as hyped up as everyone was expecting, but it was still a good event. This Cyber Rodeo, awesome event. I thought it was pretty entertaining. I felt like the whole atmosphere at the Gigafactory in Austin was pretty electric, but it was a good event. I didn't even mean to say that, but it was a pretty good event.
Out good.
Yeah. And overall, it's a good event, but it just doesn't equal a rising stock price the next day. So, keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean,
there has been events in the past where Tesla's flown up. Like I remember one time they came out with their Model S, and I remember it was like the quickest one. Like it went 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. I remember the day after that happened, Tesla stock started exploding. But I guess as we know, not every event's the same. And I guess whenever you're looking at like an opening of a factory, it's just not anything crazy. People were probably hoping for some better announcements or something like that. And keep in mind it was still a big event, and the announcements were cool. It's just, I guess it just wasn't like wowing.
Yeah. All right. Then we have Chris saying Pfizer crossing down. Let's take a look. PFE. Pfizer, it was looking really good over like the past 2 days. Yeah, it's definitely pulling back a little bit right now. It's down like 1% or so. Tom, what do you have for some upcoming support levels?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at like 54.50 as a pretty good support here. It looks like we broke like 1 cent below it down to like 54.48 or 54.49 here. But in pre-market, we can see there was some movement right around 54.50. So that might hold up as a bit of an intraday support. But if this stock keeps falling, I have a next support at 54. And then below that, the next major one is down at 53. I think 53 is going to be the bigger level down here. But that would be a pretty big drop if Pfizer fell all the way back down to there. So I would think maybe 54 will hold up today as a good level. But I will say, I'm not going to be surprised if Pfizer pulls back, because if we look at it on the daily chart, it's had two explosive green days back to back. And I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe some downwards movement, kind of like what we saw, Mike, back on, it looks like March 15th. You can see that Pfizer had 3 or 4 great green days in a row, and then it just had one consolidation day where it fell and then kind of held its ground. I feel like we might do that again today, where it's just like a nice consolidation day. And we can see on the daily chart that the level that Pfizer just got rejected at, right around like 55.50, is a pretty big resistance, where we got rejected just a couple weeks ago too.
There we go. Well, Tom, do you have any last minute plays before we close out of the stream?
Yeah, I have to hit on this one more time. Poor AMC, Mike. It fell below $20 yesterday. Just keeps moving lower here. And honestly, this setup is just not looking good in my opinion. It's confirming off of $20 this morning. It looked like it tried to run up, tried to break above 20, but it just got rejected right at market open again. And now we're right back to the downside. I have a feeling we might see AMC continue to sell off here. And I was really hoping for a nice bounce at that $20 support, but it looks like it didn't happen, and the stock's continuing to fall. And it's not just AMC today; it's all the growth plays. Like even Enphase is like leading my watch list to the downside, down 3.9%. We can see how explosive Enphase has been lately. So some of these pullbacks, Mike, aren't too surprising. Like in Enphase's case, like I'm really not too surprised. Like we're honestly not even that far away from the high here, and compared to the low, we're still really high over the past couple months. So that's good to see. Same thing with like Rivian. These poor EV companies are continuing to get destroyed, kind of like DraftKings and stocks like that. So maybe today will be another day to play puts, Mike. Like a lot of stocks are in the red. And I know earlier we were talking about bigger stocks like Apple starting to break those supports. Looks like it's kind of consolidating here. And, if we start to get a second leg down, I feel like playing some of these tech stocks to the downside might be the way, especially like AMD there right around 100.
There we go. Well, thank you guys so much for watching today's stream. Before we close out, I want to give a shout out to everyone who joined. So thank you so much, George, Mike, Keisha, Vicky, Hunter, J Deep, Eric, Mike, Raymond, Iranical, Mink, DCM, Neighbor J, Chris, and Couch Potato. Thank you guys so much for joining. The market honestly isn't really moving too much today, so keep that in mind. Besides that, have a great weekend.